Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto was a player of League of Legends. Meet Naruto Uzumaki, a not-so-regular teen with a passion for the MOBA game League of Legends even though he sucked at it. His life was normal until he was introduced to the supernatural world and found out he had an irregular sacred gear. So, the problem? How should he fend off Amano Yuuma? With Lucian's relic pistols? There are so many choices. Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel, and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard. Chapter 38. Hey there, Naruto-chan. Hearing that, Naruto turned his head and smiled when he saw the girl, who he had been waiting for, arriving at his side with a bright smile on her face. And no, it wasn't one of his girlfriends, although, it's still hard for him to believe that he had more than one girlfriend, and the number just kept growing. Good morning, Seraphal-sama. Naruto smiled, greeting Seraphal Leviathan, the older sister of Sona Citri, and the Mal Leviathan of the Devil faction with the honorific that she deserved since this was the first time the two of them actually interacted with each other, and he did blast her sister off with a full-powered final spark a few days ago. There's no need to call me Seraphal-sama. You can call me Sarah-chan, or Leviathan. Seraphal chirped, striking a magical girl pose with a playful childish wink and a cute gesture, even though she was wearing a beautiful red and blue yukata with a yellow obi securing it around her body instead of her usual pink magical girl outfit, something that she could be seen constantly with even outside of her hit TV show Miracle Leviathan. Right, Sarah. Before Naruto could say it, Seraphal had already raised her hand in the air and brought it down the top of his head in a karate chop, which had no force behind it, so Naruto wasn't hurt at all. That's for beating my Sotan and her family. Seraphal said, huffing and then pouting cutely as she then took her hand back and crossed it on her chest. I'm sorry, I guess. Naruto said, responding to Seraphal with a somewhat nervous smile while scratching the back of his head. It's hard to tell if Seraphal was really mad at him for beating Sona Citri or not, but Naruto had been told by Surzex himself that her love for her sister was even more extreme than his love for Rias. No, it's fine. Seraphal said, her expression softening as she smiled at Naruto. You and Rias-ten won fair and square. If you weren't that strong, then Sotan and her family wouldn't have the chance to give it their all and show everyone their determination and how serious they are about their dream. No one is gonna continue to make fun for them now, and for that, I am very grateful. Seraphal finished with a grateful nod to him, making Naruto smile brightly at her before wincing in pain when the Leviathan suddenly grabbed his cheeks with both hands and pinched hard. But if I ever see you hitting my Sotan that hard again, Naruto-chan, then I will make sure to hit you back myself 10 times harder. I don't care if you are Ryatan's beloved, if you try to hurt my Sotan, I will make sure that you will pay, got it? She asked, a dark aura about her even though she's still smiling. Why yes, Seraphal-sama. Naruto managed to answer while having his cheeks pinched, feeling nervous again all of a sudden. It won't happen again. I promise. Don't worry, Naruto-chan. I trust you. Rias-tan was right. Why oh, you are so easy to tease even though you don't really think much about a superior, which I don't really mind. Seraphal giggled before she finally let go of his cheeks, making Naruto smile in relief. She was the most powerful woman in the entire underworld, alright. Even though she didn't look like she was really trying, he felt like he could just rip his face apart if she moved her hands to the side. Let's go. Yasaka-san's attendant must be waiting for us. Yes, please lead the way, Sarah-chan. Naruto nodded his head and said, making Seraphal beam at him before leading him into Kyoto, the home of the Kyoto Yukai faction, having been both invited to the place by Yasaka herself. Naruto had been looking forward to seeing Kyoto himself, though he didn't expect the chance for him to do that would come so early. Each year, it had become a tradition for the second-year high school students of Kuo Academy to go on a 3-day school trip to Kyoto with their teachers near the end of the second semester. Considering the number of positive feedbacks that the academy received every year, as well as the fact that Rias just couldn't stop ranting about how great Kyoto were whenever the subject was brought up, must also be because she was a huge Japanophile. The trip was supposed to be a lifetime experience. It did not take it long for the two devils to walk up to a building called Kyoto Surzex Hotel, which was owned by the House of Gremory and named after Surzex himself. A young girl with light blonde hair wearing the tradition red and white shrine maiden outfit was standing at the front gate, and she seemed to be the one Serafal had told him to have been waiting for them. "Greeting, Serafal-sama, Naruto-sama." The girl bowed her head to them, upon seeing the two approaching before introducing herself. "I am Shiho Yurumi, Yasaka-sama's personal assistant. Please follow me, I will lead you to the Yasaka-sama's residence." "Yes, please lead the way." Serafal replied, and the two of them followed the girl to an area that reminded Naruto of paintings that describing the Edo period, passing through an invisible barrier that seemed to be keeping ordinary human from entering, and seeing the place for what it was, the home of Kyoto Yukai. At first glance, Naruto could see that all the houses lining either side of a road made of dirt in the area were old, looking to have been built hundreds of years ago, but they were more or less still in perfect condition. The area was also rather dark, but not that Naruto had problem seeing with his devil sight, with the only sources of light were the ones that came from the houses, and lantern-like yukai floating around the streets, seemingly minding their own businesses. "So, all the yukai in Kyoto live here?" Naruto asked as the kitsune assistant as they walked, having made her ears and tail appear when they passed through the barrier. Shiho nodded. "More or less, yes. There are yukai living among human in their residential districts, but the majority of us Kyoto yukai prefer to live as close as we can around Yasaka-sama. We call this place the inner capital." "Are those humans?" "No. I heard that they're devils." "Devils, eh? It's pretty rare to see them here. Don't think it's ever happened before. So, I'm guessing that it's rare for devils like us to visit the inner capital?" After hearing the yukai around them said that, Naruto could help but ask out of curiosity. As a matter of fact, yes. Only recently that devil has begun to visit the inner capital. With Serafal-sama being the first, and you being the second. The girl answered him, her fox ears twitching. That said, it is bound to happen eventually. The world is changing for the better, so it is only natural for us to do the same. After passing through what he supposed was a residential area, the three entered a forest with a large river flowing through it and soon found themselves standing before a massive red torii gate connected to a huge, immense mansion, with the design of a traditional Japanese building surrounded by a wall that could only be accessed through the massive torii gate. "Wait for me, Ariwani-chan." Passing the torii gate, the sounds of hearty laughter could be heard, making Naruto turn his head and see his Gumiho champion Ari skipping around the front garden with a ball in her hand, with a young and relatively short girl with golden blonde hair tied in a ponytail and matching eyes chasing behind her with a huge smile on her face. She also had 9 golden fox tails and matching ears. Much like the other fox girls he had met, her attire was the traditional shrine maiden outfit and tall geta with white tabi. "Hey Ari!" Naruto called, waving his hand at his 9-tailed fox champion. "Naruto!" Ari exclaimed before she threw herself at her summoner, putting her arms around his neck in a warm, tight hug as Serafal smiled at them while the fox assistant Shiho bowed her head to the blonde girl who had followed after Ari. "Why didn't you tell me that you would come?" she asked, after pulling back from him, but still keeping her arms around his shoulder. "Nah, I didn't want to ruin the surprise." The blonde summoner grinned, before he turned his attention over to the youngest fox girl, who was eyeing him rather judgmentally. "And who is this young lady?" "Naruto, this is Kunu. She is Yasaka's daughter." Naruto nodded his head in understanding as Ari turned to Kunu and continued on with the introduction. Yasaka did say that she and her daughter were the only 9-tailed foxes in the world before Ari came in, so it wasn't difficult for Naruto to take a guess of who she could be. "Kunu, this is Naruto Uzumaki, the very special friend of mine that I have been telling you about." "Oh wow, now I feel honored all of a sudden." Naruto grinned at his fox champion, who winked back at him in response before smiling at Kunu, offering the little girl his hand. "Pleased to meet you, Kunu-chan." Although reluctantly, Kuno accepted the friendly gesture and took his hand, shaking his hand lightly before she pulled back and turned to Shiho, without even saying anything to him. Naruto couldn't help but have the impression that she didn't like him very much for some reasons. "Thank you for bringing them here, Shiho-san. I can take it from here." The one-tailed fox girl smiled and lowered her head to the daughter of her clan leader before bursting into flames and disappearing. "Please come with me, Serafal-sama. I will bring you to my mother," Kuna said, bowing her head respectfully to the Leviathan Mao of the Devil faction. "Yes, please lead the way, Kuna-chan," Serafal said, before Kuna turned around and made her way toward the mansion, with Serafal, Naruto and Ari following closely behind her. As they walked, Naruto couldn't help but ask, "Hey Ari, why do I have the feeling that Kuna-chan doesn't like me very much?" "She doesn't," Ari answered with a playful giggle, making Naruto arch an eyebrow in surprise at the straightforwardness. "When I told her about you, and how amazing you were, she actually only paid attention to the fact that as my summoner you could take me away from her whenever you wanted, and you could also abuse your power to command me to do lewd things against my will." "As seriously? She's just a child, Naruto." Ari giggled. "Yasaka told me that Kuna had always wanted an older sister, so when I came in, she quickly saw me as one. It's actually quite nice, you know, to have a younger sister to play with and to look after. The yokai around here, especially the one from the Kitsune clan, also treat me very kindly, a little too respectful for my taste because of the number of my tails, but they are all so nice to me. I am happy for you, Ari." Naruto smiled, making Ari nod her head at him and respond with one of her own, smiling softly and beautifully at her summoner. After that, the group arrived before Yasaka, who greeted them warmly before the meeting that forged the bridge between the Kyoto Yukai faction and the Devil faction, representing the three biblical factions, began. Break. In a few more days, summer would be over, and it's time for them to return to the human world. "Remember, Naruto-kun, from now on you can think of us as your own family. If you ever feel like returning here, don't hesitate," Lord Gremory said with a warm smile as he placed his hands on Naruto's shoulders. "I will be looking forward to the day we can meet again, and please send your parents my regard." "I will, too, Sama." Naruto nodded, grinning brightly at the man. Having spent half of the summer around Ria's parents, Naruto had gotten a lot more comfortable as addressing them the way they wanted him. Although he couldn't say the same about Rias, as she still blushed whenever she was around and hearing him calling her parents mom and dad, despite seemingly having no problem addressing his parents the same way. Girls were so hard to understand sometime. "Take good care of yourself and your family, Rias. You know where to find us if you ever need our help." Venilana spoke to her daughter while gently stroking her hair. "I understand, Okasama." Nodding her head in satisfaction, Venilana then turned her attention over to Naruto, and spoke her piece to him as well, making Rias blush even harder at what she then said. "Please watch over my selfish daughter there in the human world for me, Naruto-kun." "Okasama. What are you saying?" "I will do my best, Ka-sama." Naruto nodded his head at the brown-haired woman, who ignored her daughter's outburst and smiled approvingly at Naruto before he was grabbed and dragged away by an embarrassed Rias. "Take care of yourself, everyone," Velanana called after them when the rest of the occult research club departed. Era, the future of our family is really bright, isn't it?" she asked, smiling at her husband, who couldn't help but nod his head to her in response. During the trip back in the train, Naruto spent the majority of his time doing his summer homework, something that he had neglected completely in favor of his training. Rias, Akino and quite literally everyone else had done theirs, since they did not have a scarily powerful silver-haired maid trying to turn them into a popsicle every day, and had some free time at night to do their homework, leaving Naruto to do it alone. The homework, while excessively long, weren't really that difficult. It's just smack. What? Naruto asked, reaching up with one hand to touch the spot Rias had just hit him with the notebook of his homework after taking a look over it for him, wanting to make sure that he did it properly. "Do everything again. You got a couple wrong," the crimson-haired heiress said sternly with an overly sweet smile. I won't accept any of my servant to do their work poorly, understood? But I am also your boyfriend. All the more reason to do your homework flawlessly. Now redo everything. Everything? But you said I only got a couple wrong. Naruto tried to reason, but Ria shut him up by raising his notebook over her head again, before putting it down and opening to an empty page. I want to play League. He pleaded, looking at Kuroka and Kaneko, who were playing ranked flex with Luffy while Office were watching them in interest at their own table. Evelyn, meanwhile, were once again hanging out with the church trio, something that she could be seen doing a lot lately, having grown close to them through Asia. She seemed to be teaching them something, and with how much Irina looked torn between continuing to listen to her and performing an exorcism on the ancient demon of Runeterra, it appeared that she was up to no good again. You can play plenty once we're home, or at the very least, after you have done your homework properly. Ria shook her head and said sweetly, placing one hand on his notebook and tapping it with her index finger. The pawn groaned and then picked up his pen to start redoing his homework, with Rias joining him this time and helping like a strict teacher. Around them, the rest of the ORC couldn't help but chuckle in amusement. It wasn't difficult for them to see that this was just Rias trying to get back at her boyfriend for going along with her parents while they were trying to embarrass her. A few hours later, the Gremory train arrived at the underground station in the human world. Naruto was the first to jump out of the train, smiling as he took in a deep breath of air and stretched. The underworld was nice and all, but there's no way that it could compare to the liveliness and normality of the human world. Let's go home, everyone, Rias announced as she stepped out of the train with the rest of the occult research club. But before they could do that, a certain gentle-looking, handsome young man with blonde hair and golden eyes, which were almost always closed or squinted, appeared and approached them. Diodora? What are you doing here? Rias asked in surprise as Naruto hardened his gaze at the high-class devil. But the Astaroth heir ignored both him and Rias and focused his attention only on Asia. Asia Argento. We finally met. Do I know you? Asia asked, looking slightly confused. With a sincere expression, Diodora continued to address the former nun, so you have forgotten about me. We met that time. He then unbuttoned his shirt and showed a very large scar on his chest. Asia's eyes widened when she saw it, appearing to have finally remembered him. This wound, could it be that? Yes, my name is Diodora Astaroth. When you healed me at that time, you weren't able to handle it to the point where it didn't leave a scar, but my life was saved thanks to your sacred gear. Now, I have come to see you. He then walked toward Asia, who got extremely uncomfortable at his sudden approach. Fortunately for her, Diodora stopped when Naruto raised an arm and pushed Asia behind him while glaring at the pure-blood devil. Can you get out of my way, you filthy? Before Diodora could finish, a cold chill suddenly ran down his spine before he felt a malicious presence creeping behind him, and something like the sharp, pointy tip of a blade lightly grazing the scar on his chest. The Astaroth heir spun around abruptly, but didn't see anyone behind him. Only when he turned back that he came face to face with the creepily grinning face of Agony's embrace, Evelyn, in her demon shade form. Boo! Ah! Diodora screamed in terror and fell back, crawling away on his hands and feet as Evelyn emerged from her shadow while smiling in satisfaction. The ancient demon of Agony then took a step toward him, her lasher moving around her menacingly, but stopped when a group of girls ran out from their hiding spots and came to stand protectively in front of Diodora, appearing to be none other than his peerage. Kill her. Kill that fucking demon. Diodora screamed to his queen while pointing his hand at Evelyn. Oh my, where did all that delicacy and nobility go? Evelyn asked, winking playfully at him as she put a hand on her hip and leaned forward, showing your true color I see. Try it. Naruto growled as he and Rias walked up to stand next to his champion, a certain dark red blade in his hand unleashing a powerful aura. The sight of the weapon alone was enough to make Diodora's peerage back off nervously. Take your master and leave this instant, unless you want to fight us here. Rias spoke in a firm tone. The Queen of Diodora Astaroth looked conflicted, but it didn't look like she had another choice in the matter, not when the strongest queen in the entire underworld and the Ouroboros dragon god Ophis were standing there behind the Gremory group. Grabbing her still terrified master, the queen raised her hand and casted her magic, making a large magic circle appear underneath their feet and teleport herself, Diodora, and the other members of his peerage away. Wah! That was scary. Irina finally said after she had made her angel wings disappear, having rushed to her side with Zenobia to protect her. I thought we were going to fight them here for sure. Are you okay, Asia? Zenobia asked, looking concernedly at her friend. I'm fine. Thank you, Zenobia. The former nun said, smiling at her two friends before looking at Naruto, who nodded his head to her with a small smile. Anyway, Naruto, would you like to tell when and how you managed to gain control of that weapon? Rias couldn't help but ask, walking up to her boyfriend with her arms crossing under her chest. You see, it's kinda a long story. Naruto said, chuckling nervously while backing off from Rias and the others. Evelyn giggled as she watched Naruto being cornered by not just Rias, but also Akino, Ravel and Kaneko, with Asia, Zenobia and Irina following closely behind them, expecting an answer from her summoner. Evelyn. Yes? The demoness asked, smiling sweetly as she turned around and looked at Graphia, who had walked behind her. Try not to do that again in the future. Graphia said. Her tone clearly showed that it was not a demand, but a request. Why didn't you stop me then? You could have stopped me, couldn't you? Evelyn asked teasingly, leaning a little toward Graphia, who remained as calm as ever. Why did you try to scare him then? Graphia responded with her own question, tilting her head to the side and smiled when she saw Evelyn glancing at Asia even though she chose to remain silent. She knew very well that Evelyn didn't do it just because Diodora was about to insult her summoner. Chapter 39. Hey, isn't that Uzumaki and Rias-senpai? They are walking hand in hand. They are so cute together. So, it's true. Rias-senpai is really dating Uzumaki. I heard they even went to summer vacation together in Reykjavik for that League of Legends event. I can see that. But why is Akino-senpai also with him too? What the hell? Why is she hugging him arm? Don't tell me that she has fallen for that guy too. Damn you, Uzumaki. Naruto just rolled his eyes at the hateful glares and words that were being directed at him. Rias, whose hand he was holding, was glaring at Akino for suddenly running up to his side and hugging his other arm, while walking with them, leaning against him while mashing her very large breasts against his bicep. Trailing a little bit behind him were Kaneko, Ravel and the church trio, who had all moved into his house to live with him, Rias, Ravel and Asia a couple of days ago after summer ended, along with Akino, who had been the first to show up at his house. They had decided to go to school together, and were obviously drawing a lot of attention from the students of Kuo Academy. Everyone stopped whatever they were doing and stared as they walked, especially when they finally arrived at the academy and strolled through the gate together. The girls were cooing at how cute he and Rias were looking together, walking hand in hand, no longer bothering to hide the fact that they had become a couple, while at the same time gossiping about a possibly love triangle or rectangle between him and the school idols. Some looked disappointed because it appeared that he had been taken, but the disappointment soon disappeared when Kiba came into view, walking at the back of the group with his trademark charming smile so he could watch over his friends like a true knight. Nonetheless, the ways the girls reacted to them were tolerable, but the boys, on the other hand, were a completely different matter. It was quite obvious that they hated him, in a dramatic manner, for not just dating Rias Gremory, the #1 beauty of Kuo Academy, but also having the attention of the other one of the two great One-Isama, and the blonde foreigners Ravel Phoenix and Asia Argento, and who knew who else. Naruto had kinda gotten used to it by now though, and so he had decided that his best course of action would be just ignoring them. Kiba-kun. How was your summer? Are you seeing anyone at the moment, Kiba-kun? Would you like to hang out with me after school? Ladies Kiba spoke while doing his best to calm the group of girls that had gathered around him down. Even though he was smiling the same way he always did, anyone of the occult research club could tell that he was feeling rather uncomfortable. As much as I'd love to have the time to spend with you all, I'll have to decline. I have club activities after school. I'm really sorry. Ah. The girls groaned in disappointment, while Kiba received the same hate Naruto had been getting from the moment they entered school. Eventually, everyone went their separate ways to their classes, though not before Naruto had gotten a kiss on the cheek by Rias. Akino had tried to do the same, but Rias grabbed her and pulled her away before she could do it. Kaneko and Ravel soon departed as well, arguing about something as usual on the way, leaving Naruto to go to his classes with Asia, Zenobia and Irina, following closely behind them as the three girls walked ahead while talking about all sorts of things with each other. Just before he could walk into his class, Naruto felt someone tapping his shoulder and turned his head around to see who it was. When he didn't see anyone, he turned the other way and wasn't surprised to see Momo Hanakai walking past him into his class, while holding her bag in front of her, making Naruto look up at the nameplate above the door to double-check that he got the right classroom. Momo-chan, isn't this? I asked Sona Kaishu, and she made the arrangement for me to be transferred to your class, Naruto-kun. Momo answered simply as she turned around to face him, but continued to walk backward, making the blonde raise an eyebrow in surprise. Someone has to make sure that you are not going to skip class again this semester. Oh? So, you mean it's not because you want to be in the same class as me? Naruto asked while following and smiling playfully at Momo. I don't know. Maybe that too. Momo said, tapping his chin thoughtfully before she took the seat behind him, sending a firm look to its original owner and forcing the poor guy to go to the back of their class to grab a spare set of table chair. So you better behave, Naruto-kun, because I will be watching. The white-haired girl finished, pointing at her eyes and then at him. Yeah, whatever. Naruto chuckled in amusement before taking his seat while Momo was warmly welcomed by the church trio, who rushed over to her to get to know their new classmate better. As Naruto took out his books and got ready for the first class, the blonde noticed Issei Hayadu, who was hanging out with his two friends Matsuda and Motohama, looking at his way and couldn't help but give the guy a small nod of acknowledgement, which he saw and did the same in response. Class eventually settled down and soon the front door slid open, allowing the teacher of their first class to step in, making Naruto and the reincarnated devil to widen their eyes in surprise because they could all recognize her. A beautiful young woman with long, straight silver hair and aqua-colored eyes who appeared to be in her late teens and wore a pair of glasses and simple business suit and skirt, which looked rather plain and cheap. So this was the surprise Rias had told them about before leaving for school that morning. Good morning, class. The Valkyrie Rossweisse spoke as she stepped behind her table and adjusted her glasses, introducing herself with a confident smile. My name is Rossweisse, and I'm going to be your new civics teacher. Let's all get along. She finished with a mature aura around her. Maybe it was because he had been spending too much time around Graphia, but Naruto couldn't help but think that Rossweisse looked kind of forced acting in such manner. Sensei. As the class, mostly the boys, cheered in excitement for having such a beautiful teacher, a male student then shouted loudly after throwing his hand in the air, would you mind if we asked you a couple of questions? You know, so we can all get to know you better. Well, I don't see why not. Looking rather uncomfortable now, Rossweisse nodded her head, and soon realized it was a big mistake. The moment that she gave them the permission, almost all the boys in the class stood up from their seats and began firing off questions at Rossweisse, despite Momo's best effort to keep the order, making Herb back off with her hands raising in front of her as if to defend herself from the barrage of questions. How old are you, Sensei? That's rude, you can't ask a woman her age. And how big are your tits? I can't tell you that. And that's also rude. Sensei, do you have a boyfriend? Well, no. I don't, but have you ever dated anyone, Sensei? I have not, but Wait, so you have never had a boyfriend before, Rossweisse Sensei? While Rossweisse's face had been growing redder and redder with each and every question, the poor Valkyrie instantly froze when she heard that last statement. Not only had that, but tears begun to well up rapidly in the woman's large blue eyes. "It's true. I've never had a boyfriend," Rossweisse said in a low tone, making the male students look at her nervously. They had expected her to explode at them like any teacher would, but to their shock Rossweisse suddenly threw her head back and began crying in earnest, tears streaming down her eyes like waterfalls as her mature front collapsed and broke down. "Go ahead and laugh at me. I don't care anymore. Wah. WWH, the new teacher is crying. This is all your fault." "What? How is this our fault?" As the girls yelled at the boys about their perversion, Momo and Irina didn't waste any time to rush to Rossweisse's side and try their best to comfort her. It wasn't until the headmaster and also Azazel himself noticed the loud shouts and yelling coming from their class, and went over to check that everyone finally stopped arguing and Rossweisse stopped crying, allowing class to start finally. That day, Class 2B had a new civics and homeroom teacher, who was a beautiful and attractive young woman with silver hair and eyes as blue as the clear sky. But they also learned to never mention the word boyfriend in front of her. "Break. So that old geezer really left you behind and went back to Asgard on his own?" Naruto asked with a deadpan expression. It was after their school day had ended that the blonde found himself in the ORC clubroom with everyone else. He was currently sitting with Rias, facing Rossweisse, who was sitting on the other side of the table and drinking a cup of tea. On the other hand, the others were just minding their own businesses, like doing homework or caring for Yumi in Asia and Kaniko's case, while listening to their conversation. It appeared that after Rossweisse was abandoned by Odin after the raiding game between the Gremory and the Citri, Rias had arranged for her to become a teacher at Kyoto Academy, as she had nowhere else to go. Despite only being 19 years old, Rossweisse had already finished college, for the Valkyrie, of course, having rapidly skipped through multiple grades in high school, making her more than qualified to teach others as a teacher. "Why yes, and when I tried to contact him, Odin-sama even said that I was fired." Rossweisse sobbed as she lowered her cup of tea down, and was served another one by Akino, looking rather depressed. "He thought it might be better for me to stay here and help with the relationship between Asgard and the three factions, that I might also be able to find a boyfriend while staying here." The silver-haired Valkyrie choked before continuing with a scold. "But I know better. He probably just wants me to stop bugging him so he can freely prey on women with his lecherous behaviors." "Well, when you put it that way," Ria said, chuckling nervously while exchanging a look with her boyfriend. She had heard that Rossweisse had been Odin's bodyguard for a very long time, so long that she actually held the record for the longest duration of being his escort. "Even though I was made fun of by other Valkyries and Odin-sama himself for not having a boyfriend." Naruto and Ria's sweat dropped as Rossweisse continued to rant on. "So that's the reason why she's so bitter and sensitive about the subject, and having a small salary for being his bodyguard, I continued to support him with his daily life, and getting kicked out of Asgard is what I got in return. I can't just come back to Asgard now after Odin-sama. Everyone will probably just laugh at me even more. Now, why don't you look at the bright side?" Azazel chuckled as he sat down next to Rossweisse and put a hand on her shoulder. "At least now you don't have to follow him around and trouble yourself with Odin anymore. Plus, you now have a stable job as a teacher here at Kyoto Academy, and the pay is nothing to be scoffed at either. Still, Rossweisse, this is something I meant to ask you yesterday. Would you like to join my peerage?" Rias asked, causing everyone but Azazel and Akino to look at her in surprise. Though they could understand why Rias wanted someone like Rossweisse in her peerage. As Odin's personal bodyguard for a very long time, and a Valkyrie, her strength and magic power was without a doubt enough to be recognized for such positions. Rias had probably done quite a bit of research on her before making the decision. The crimson-haired girl then grabbed her bag and took out a stack of documents, which she then handed over to Rossweisse before continuing, "I have prepared this just for you. These are all the benefits and privileges that come with joining my peerage and becoming a part of the Gremory family. Please give these a read and tell me what you think. Rossweisse nodded her head and then read the documents, having a look of astonishment on her face after she had gone through a couple of it. There are so many guarantees, and that many tax refunds. It's great, isn't it, Rossweisse-sensei? Ria seemed to have taken a hold of the former Valkyrie, who appeared to care a lot her finance. It's amazing. So the D-Devils earned this much by just fulfilling requests of their clients. Rossweisse nodded her head rapidly before continuing. The base salary is totally different from ours. Even if you compare them to Valhalla, this is superior. You can think of it as your second job, Rossweisse-san. You can continue to work here at Kyoto as a teacher, but when the times come, all that I want is for you to fight with us. Ria said as Rossweisse became more and more excited with each document that she finished. It's just that I don't want your magical talents as a Valkyrie to go to waste when they can be put to good use, that's all. Rossweisse nodded her head in understanding before saying, Isn't the current Lucifer Mao your brother, Ria-san? Rossweisse asked. That's right. Rias nodded her head in confirmation before she took out her final evil piece, the rook piece, and showed it to Rossweisse. So how about it, sensei? Would you like to join my family and start working in the underworld as a devil? Rossweisse looked at Rias for a moment before she eventually nodded her head and smiled at the crimson-haired girl. Very well, I will join your peerage, Ria-san. The silver-haired Valkyrie announced, and a crimson light then swallowed her and lit up the ORC clubroom as Rossweisse accepted the rook, evil piece. When the light died down, a pair of black wings appeared from Rossweisse's back for a second before she willed it to disappear. And so, the peerage is complete. Rossweisse-sensei, why don't you introduce yourself to your new family? Ria suggested, making Rossweisse smile before standing up to do just that. Pleased to meet you, everyone. I am Rossweisse, a Valkyrie, but now I have been reincarnated as a devil. Apparently, the Grimoire's annual salary for their servants, as well as benefits, are all so much better than those in my homeland. I have also realized that I will be much more secure financially by being with the House of Grimoire, and my future will be much better, so I chose to join your group and became a reincarnated devil. Rossweisse announced, making everyone, Rias and Azazel included, even though the two of them had known about her greed and desire, sweat drop. So please be nice and take care of me from now on. Nonetheless, Naruto and the rest of the club clapped their hands for Rossweisse, wholeheartedly welcoming the former Valkyrie into their group. And as everyone began to celebrate Rossweisse's reincarnation, Naruto noticed Rias looking at her phone with a serious expression, no longer having a smile on her face. Did something happen, Rias? Naruto asked, sitting down next to his girlfriend. Rias nodded her head before answering, yes, our next opponent for the Youth Devil rating game has been decided. It will be against Diodora Astaroth. Chapter 40. Whether you believed it or not, Naruto actually had a rather long list of people that he disliked or just outright hated, and for some very good reasons too. In League of Legends, Naruto hated the trolls that he met in rank almost as much as most League players hated those Yasuo players, which was kinda normal when you were a League of Legends player. They were the bastards who would always find a way to make sure that he would lose his games, especially his promotions, and stay the infamous Bronze Eye Police forever, doing stuffs like running it down mid or taking away all the kills in CS. Now that he had gotten out of Bronze and was now a Diamond 2 player, he no longer met those who would give their absolute hardest to lose the game just because they didn't want him to advance anymore, but toxic players were still a thing, and from time to time he would have no choice but to respond to them, or report them after the game was over. Outside of League, Naruto didn't know if he could ever bring himself to hate anyone more than how much he used to hate Razor Phoenix. He disliked Cao Cao too, for ruining his time in Reykjavik and threatening the life of his friends and an entire city just to get to him, but the guy had the strength and skills to back up his arrogance, while Razor, on the other hand, was just downright annoying with his holier-than-thou attitude. Moreover, Razor used to be Rias' fiancé, but he was also a pervert and an arrogant playboy with the only things from Rias that he cared about was her status as the heiress of the Grimoire and her good looks, seeing her as nothing more than a pretty face and an attractive body. It would be a huge understatement to say that Naruto had had a great time doing so much more than just kicking his teeth in and scaring him shitless with Aurelian Soul. Naruto heard from Revel that after his defeat, Razor had fallen into a slump, and had not moved out of his house, specifically his room. It appeared that he had become traumatized by his own defeat and developed a fear of dragons, freaking out whenever they were mentioned around him. To be fair, he would freak out too if he saw a being like Aurelian Soul on the sky, but to fall into depression and become a shut-in even worse than Gasper just after one single loss. Razor sure had brought a new low to himself. At first glance, Diodora Astaroth did not strike Naruto as someone who could possibly be Razor 2.0, mostly because of his facial expressions. He initially appeared to be a gentle, well-mannered, and even charismatic individual, but Naruto knew better, and it wasn't just because Revel had warned him about Diodora beforehand, having noticed something very wrong about him while attending those noble and high-class parties with her brothers. Naruto had also asked Revel to dig a little into his peerage's backgrounds and immediately came to the discovery that almost every single member, possibly all even, was former nuns or holy maidens, all of whom were expelled from the church, just like Asia. If such was the case, then it wouldn't be a surprise if he had preyed on them from the very beginning, and now, he had set his sight on Asia, having purposely staged his own injuries to have her healed him, which had resulted in her eventual excommunication from the church. Just that alone made Naruto hate Diodora so much more than he had ever hated Razor. At the very least, Razor was just a somewhat simple-minded idiot, while Diodora was just a plain sadistic devil. It's impossibly hard for Naruto to believe that Ajuka Beelzebub was related to him, as he came from the branch family of the Astaroth devil household. As if fate wanted to rub the fact on his face, Diodora once again showed up in front of them, acting as if nothing had happened during their previous encounter. Currently, he and Rias were seated across from each other at the center of the VIP meeting room on the top floor of Uzumaki residence while Graphia was serving them some tea. Azazel was also present, having come over when he was informed that Diodora was going to come over to pay a visit to Rias and her peerage, specifically Asia. The duo-color-haired fallen angel was currently sitting beside the two kings and acted as an advisor to their meeting, even though he had stated that he knew his advice was not going to be needed. Then, the servants of Rias were sitting on their own seats around the room behind Rias, facing Diodora's peerage, while both queens were sitting with their masters. The scenario reminded Naruto a little of the meeting with Razor and his peerage, but the only difference was that this time it was all about Asia, who sat a little behind him with a worried expression as she eyed Diodora. "Rias-san, please allow me to get straight to the point." Diodora began after drinking some tea that Graphia had offered him. "I would like to trade our bishops." "I is he talking about me?" Gasper squealed in fear while hiding inside his carton box, as usual. "Of course not." Kaneko spoke to him sternly and kicked his carbon box with the side of her left foot just hard enough for him to feel it. "The servant of Rias-san that I'm looking for is Bishop Asia Argento," Diodora announced, without a moment of hesitation while looking at Asia with a refreshing smile, seemingly ignoring Naruto even if he was glaring at him. As much as he had wanted to have Evelyn at his side with how she had scared him the last time they met, Diodora had requested Graphia personally that he did not want that demon around while he was talking to Rias, so she had no choice but to tell him to leave her out of this. Diodora then continued as if Rias had already agreed to his offer, raising his hand in the air as one of his servants, presumably a bishop, took a step forward to present herself before the Gremory heiress nonchalantly. "Who I will be offering in return is..." "It is just as I thought, but I'm sorry." Rias spoke coldly and matter-of-factly to Diodora and interrupted his speech before he could finish it, her tone brooking no further argument with "How much you seem to want Asia. I knew you would come to me sooner or later with this trade offer, so please allow me to say it to you. I have no intention of making a trade. It's not that your bishop can't possibly stand up to mine, I merely don't wish to trade away the girl who I think of as my little sister." "Bucho-san," Asia murmured as her eyes teared up, feeling touched by Ria's firm statement. Diodora remained silent for a second, his gentle smile staying intact before he stood up. It appeared that he had expected Rias to give such an answer. I understand. Very well, I will withdraw for today, but I will not give up. To everyone's surprise, he then advanced toward Asia, who left her chair and stepped back nervously, about the same time that Naruto raised from his own seat, not caring that by doing so he had knocked his own chair over, glaring at Diodora as he stood between him and Asia and prevented him from getting anywhere near close to her. TCH, you seem to like to get in my way to my Asia, don't you, Naruto Uzumaki? Diodora asked in displeasure, a crude smile on his face as he returned Naruto's glare. Behind him, his servants glared heatedly at Naruto, but in the presence of Graphia Lucifuge, none of them dared to make a move. She's not yours, Diodora. Naruto spoke up firmly, and if you think that I will let you get anywhere near her and trouble her again, then you are even more stupid than you look. Despite the obvious insult in his tone, Diodora continued to keep the smile on his face, to the point that it started to look rather creepy as he turned to Asia and said, I see. I understand. Then how about this? In the next match, I will defeat Naruto Uzumaki, and then I would like you, Asia, to answer my love. Then he turned to look straight at Naruto. I will have fun crushing you in our next match. Make sure you have a good surgeon, cause I will make sure that you are never gonna be able to wear that fake-ass smile again. Naruto responded in a cold tone before a small smirk spread out on his face, unless of course, my champion Evelyn wants a piece of you again. Who knows, maybe she will even dress up as a nun for you to make the experience all the sweeter. Naruto said, instantly making the smile on Diodora's face disappear. Before he could say anything in response, Azazel's phone rang, and the governor turned to Rias and Diodora after taking a look at the message that he had just received. Well, what do you know? Rias, Diodora. Your game will be held in 3 days. Diodora's visit ended after the announcement, allowing the group to return to their normal life once he and his peerage had left. Later that night, Naruto helped Rossweisse move into his house and introduced her to not only his parents, who were especially delighted to have his new homeroom teacher come over to stay with them because they thought it would be good for their son, but also his champions. For someone who cared so much for her own finances like Rossweisse, to the point it appeared that she had gotten her own business suit at a 100 yen clothing shop, the idea of being able to live rent-free was like a dream come true to her. After she was abandoned and left behind by the chief of the Norse gods Odin, Rossweisse had rented an apartment not too far from Kyoto, and had stayed there for a couple of days. However, because she wanted to spend as little money as possible, not having much on her to begin with at the time because, as she had said herself, she had a very small salary for being Odin's personal bodyguard, the apartment that Rossweisse rented had been a small, low-quality, run-down one, with an equally bad landlord who tried to take advantage of her. So, when Naruto heard about her living condition, he didn't waste any time to offer her a place at his home, where not just his girlfriend, friends and several of his champions were living a comfortable and somewhat luxurious lifestyle. Rossweisse almost hugged him, but stopped herself at the last second. She had also hesitated, of course, because she didn't know it would be appropriate for a female teacher to live with her male student. But when Rias told her that she wouldn't need to pay any form of rent and all that she would have to do around the house was help out Naruto's mother and everyone with the housework, the former Valkyrie instantly agreed, her eyes sparkling in excitement. It seemed there's still much for him to learn in order to become a full-fledged devil like his girlfriend. Drake. Yes. I will participate in the relay race with Zenobia. Irina nodded her head and announced happily as she raised her hand in the air. It was the morning after their meeting with Diodora Astaroth, and currently, Class 2B was deciding the people who would represent their class in the upcoming annual sports festival, the biggest event of the year for Kyoto students. Naruto, meanwhile, wasn't really paying attention to any of what his classmates were talking about, having something else in mind. Last night, after he had finished helping Rossweisse settle, Naruto had gone back to his room and spent several hours watching the recordings of the other games with Rias in his room. While the match between the Bale and Glaciolabalas was as one-sided as it could be, neither him or Rias had felt even a little bit of surprise seeing Serorg and his peerage completely dominating their opponents, winning the game with 0 individual defeat, and without losing a single tower and neutral objectives. The scary part was that they had done so effortlessly, with Seror just overpowering anything that Zephyrdal and his servants had thrown at him. Without a doubt, it was a perfect game. However, the game between Vera and Diodora was a completely different story. At first, the two teams proved evenly matched, with Diodora's peerage leaning more toward the use of magical abilities. Vera actually did very well during the first half of the game, utilizing the strength of her Olivian to overwhelm their opponents and taking objectives across the map. However, during the second half of the game, the moment Vera and peerage pushed it to Diodora's base, the Astaroth heir had defeated them all by himself, and taken advantages of their long respawn timers to push it all the way back to her base, where he had single-handedly defeated them again before destroying their nexus, thus winning them the game. It might have just been Diodora holding back during the first half, as he had been chilling in the back and letting his servants do the fighting for him expectedly, but even so, the amount of raw power that he had displayed was just unusual even for a relative of the Beelzebub Mao. It also appeared that Azazel had started his own investigation as well, because he had told them to concentrate on their preparation for the match and leave it to him and the leaders when they tried to talk to him about it earlier this morning, after consulting Ophis and learning that she had created a lot of snakes, manifestations of a portion of her power, during her time with the Cows Brigade, several of which had not been used before her left them. Thinking about League, Naruto-kun? Naruto was brought out of his musing when he felt a light hit on the side of his head, and turned his head eyes back to see Momo standing in front of him with one hand on her hip, and the other holding a rolled-up notebook, while the rest of the class were looking directly at him. Can I help you, Momo-chan? Naruto asked unsurely. Oh, nothing, Naruto-kun, we are just wondering if you will be able to partake in the sport festival as a representative of our class. Momo said, giving him a firm look as if she was daring him to say no to that. Oh sure, I don't mind. Naruto shrugged and answered, making Momo's lips spread out into a smile of satisfaction. What do you have for me then? Well, we need a pair to participate in the mixed-gender three-legged race, so we will also need to find a partner for you. Momo said, tapping her bottom lip thoughtfully with the pen before turning around to look at the rest of their class. As much as she wanted to be Naruto's partner in the race, she had work to do as a member of the student council, who had been assigned by the teachers to watch over the entire event. Anyone want to volunteer? A lot of girls looked like they wanted to volunteer, but before they could raise their hands, a certain blonde shyly put hers in the air, while smiling at Naruto as her two friends cheered and clapped their hands for her. Even Momo looked quite satisfied, as if she did not want anyone but her to volunteer to be Naruto's partner. Ah, very well then. We will have Naruto-kun and Asia-chan participate in the three-legged race. Break. I challenge you, Zenobia. Bring it on, Irina. The two former exorcists, one a devil and the other an angel, declared confidently as they tried to outrun each other, while the girls and several boys from their class were cheering for them as the two proved to be evenly matched. Currently, the entire academy was preparing for the sports festival, and everyone of Class 2B were currently practicing in the academy's running track, with Irina and Zenobia already giving it their all and racing each other despite the sport the two of them would be participating in was the relay race. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. Not too far behind them, Naruto and Asia were also practicing for the three-legged race, having their ankles strapped to each other with a cloth. As everyone had expected, Asia appeared to be having troubles keeping up with Naruto, but compared to when they first started, she sure had improved a lot, becoming more and more comfortable running with him. Yes, that's more like it. Momo looked at her stopwatch and told them from the side as they finished another round, having been helping the two of them with their practice. Obviously, she didn't need to do the same to Zenobia and Irina, knowing they would do well in the race. The two of you are in good sync. Now, try to run like it's a real race. Understood. Saying that to Momo, Naruto then turned to look at Asia and gave her an encouraging smile. You ready, Asia-chan? Why yes, Naruto-san. Let's do it. Asia said, and the two of them began to run again, a little faster this time. Because he was an entire head taller than Asia, he had to put his hand on her shoulders instead, holding her close to him, while the blonde had her arm around his waist, her head leaning against his torso as they made another run around the running track. Naruto-san. Yes? I am not running too fast again, am I? Naruto asked, looking at Asia. Oh no, it's not like that. You are running just fine, Naruto-san. Asia shook her head and answered him. She then paused for a moment as they turned left on the track, before continuing. I noticed you had a serious look on your face before Momo-san came to talk to you during class. Were you thinking about that devil? Naruto didn't need to ask her to know who she was referring to. You know, I don't regret saving him back then, even if he really staged his own injuries, and was the reason I was banished from the church. Asia told him. I would be surprised if you did. Naruto chuckled softly, giving Asia a gentle pat on the arm before continuing. Hey Asia. Say, if you could go back to your old lifestyle, what would you do? Asia looked surprised at his question, her eyes widening for a second before she answered him while smiling softly. Even if I could, I wouldn't go back. The blonde said, without even a moment of hesitation. I like this place. I also like Ku Academy and the Occult Club. I also like Bucho-san, Akino-san, Sensei, Kiba-san, Zenobia-san, Kaneko-chan, Gasper-kun, Irina-san, and everyone in our class. I also love Naruto-san and Naruto-san's parents. The new life I started in this city is something very important, and there's something I love so much that makes it so wonderful. Naruto couldn't help but smile at her reply. Naruto-san. Can I stay by your side forever from now on? Asia then asked sincerely, looking up at him. Naruto nodded his head and flashed her his trademark grin, moving his hand up to caress her soft blonde hair fondly. Yeah. Of course, you can. Asia smiled and leaned her head against his side, wrapping her arm even tighter around his side as the two of them continued to practice for their three-legged race, finishing up shortly thereafter. Break. So basically, I can only summon and use the powers of 3 champions at a time, Naruto said while nodding his head. It was the day of the rating game against Diodora Astaroth, and the blonde was currently sitting in the ORC clubroom with Rias and Azazel, while Kaneko was sitting on his lap, munching sweets, discussing the new rules that had been created just for him. Yes, and they will be random. Naruto and Rias widened their eyes at Azazel's statement, as their chemistry teacher showed them the rule on the digital guidebook. The organizers think that it won't be entertaining for the fans to see you spam summoning the same champions all game. I understand that Ari, Evelyn and Anivia are your favorites, but there are fans who wish to see other champions in action too, like Darius or Tryndamere for example. The same goes with their weapons. You can only use the weapons of the 3 champions you are allowed to use at the time. I take it there will be a mechanic of sort to let Naruto choose the 3 random champions that he will be using in the game. Rias asked with a thoughtful expression. That's right. Azazel nodded before he went on with the explanation, showing them an image of a device that looked like a traditional slot machine with a lever. This slot machine is set up at my shop on the Rift. During the preparation phase, you can use it to spin the first 3 champions that you will be using at the start of the game. Later, when you or your team has gathered enough sigils, Naruto can go back to base and re-roll to use a different set of champions. The cost of every re-roll will be 1,600 sigils each. Windrake's discount will also affect the cost. I see. With these rules, we will be forced to focus more on objective control. We will also have to decide what we want to spend our money on, items or Naruto's re-rolls. Ria said while nodding her head in understanding. Naruto had to admit that these rules were a great way to keep him from just outnumbering and completely overpowering the other teams with a mass summon of his champions, while at the same time making it even more entertaining for the fans who wanted him to use different champions instead of the same ones that worked best for him. But what if the champions I get aren't available, or I can't summon them just yet? Naruto couldn't help but ask. You don't have to worry about it. You can connect your watch to the slot machine, and it will only choose the ones that you can summon. Azazel pointed out before he and everyone sitting in the club noticed the flashing of his phone. I guess that's the signal. Alright then. Let's go, everyone. Ria said as she stood up with Naruto and turned around to look at her peerage, who had been gearing up and preparing for the game against Diodora Astaroth and his peerage. In a flash of light, the Gremory group plus Azazel were all teleported to the Devil's Rift. Diodora and his peerage would be on the blue side, while Rias and her peerage would be on red, same as last time, but now with the addition of the slot machine that would choose Naruto's 3 champions for him standing beside Azazel's shop. How do you do, everyone? I, the queen of the Lucifer group, Graphia, will be carrying the role of arbiter in the rating game between the Gremory group and Astaroth group. As usual, I will be watching over the battle between these two families in the name of my master, Sirzex Lucifer. The voice of Graphia was heard across the field, just as Naruto and everyone had expected. And now, before we start the game, please allow me to inform you all of the new rules. Alright, hand me your watch. As Graphia carried on with the explanations of the new rules, Azazel walked toward the slot machine with Naruto, who then took off his watch and handed it over to the fallen angel governor. Azazel then pulled out a cable from behind the machine and connected it to the watch before turning both devices on, making the screen flash before displaying the champion select scene similar to League's gaming client. Pretty cool stuff, huh? I built this machine myself, you know. You sure Riot aren't gonna sue you for copyright? Naruto jokes, making Azazel roll his eyes before he put the watch on the lever of the machine, allowing Naruto to step forward and pull the lever. Instantly, the digital reels started spinning, and it did not take it long for them to stop at 3 specific champions. First, it was Aphelios, the weapon of Faithful, also known as Mr. 200 Years by all the League players in the world. Second, it was Kiana, Empress of the Elements, whose ultimate ability was known as the Supreme Display of Balance, instead of Talent, because of how ironically unbalanced and broken it was. And last but not least, Cain, the Shadow Reaper, who wielded the dark-in weapon, Rost. I like it. Not bad. Azazel praised as Naruto grinned, liking the champions he had gotten seeing. All 3 champions were incredibly strong just by themselves, especially Aphelios and Cain, an assassin who wielded a dark-in weapon. If he could get them to work with him, then he could very well bring an explosive start to the game from the very first seconds. You don't mind working with me, do you, Alone? Naruto asked, closing his eyes as he formed a telepathic link and communicated with Alone, Aphelios' twin sister, and the source of his moonstone weapons. My brother's weapons are yours, Summoner. I hope they will serve you well as they have in Aphelios' hands. Naruto smiled as he opened his eyes and came face to face with the spirit form of Alone, who smiled and lowered her head to greet him. The Lunari Seer then raised her hand, and a red scythe pistol with built-in sustain, the Severum, appeared in his hand whilst the Moonstone sniper rifle Calibrum manifested behind his back. These were just 2 out of the 5 weapons that Alone could give, the others being the Gravity Cannon Gravitum, the Flamethrower/Shogun Infernum, and the Close-Range Boomerang Crescendum, each of which had its own unique usage and power. Thank you, Alone. Naruto smiled before he put the Calibrum behind his back, letting Alone strap it to the sniper rifle before floating behind him, remaining with Naruto for as long as her weapons were still with him. He was the only one who could see and hear her. Alright, you are next, Rost. Naruto muttered as he held out his hand and summoned Cain's dark-in weapon, a dark red scythe that had a glowing red eye with slit pupil and reversed eyelid. What's up? Ugh, it's you again. Rost growled in a deep, rumbling tone as he rolled his eyes at Naruto when the blonde finished summoning him. Because Rost was regarded as a champion beside Cain, Naruto actually summoned him instead of duplicating it with his weapon summoning ability. Just this morning I had to deal with Cain and his nonsense with that order, and now I have to see you. What do you want this time, Summoner? Rost asked, and Naruto, who was chuckling in amusement, could have sworn that the dark-in was sweat-dropping. Asia. Before Naruto could answer, he suddenly heard Ria shout and snapped his head around to see a magic circle appearing beneath Asia's feet. Without even a moment of hesitation, the blonde rushed toward her, dropping Rost on the ground much to the Darkin's annoyance. On the other side, Kiba was the second quickest to react, and did the same thing, running as fast as his feet could carry him, with his hand reaching out to grab her. Before either of them could do it, however, Asia had already disappeared, having been teleported away. Where is Asia? Zenobia asked in shock, speaking everyone's shared thoughts out loud. That magic circle just now is. Azazel, who had left the shop and was now standing beside Kaneko, muttered in a serious tone as he and Naruto stared at the spot. Just before he could continue on, Diodora suddenly appeared just outside of their base with an unconscious Asia in his arms. Asia. Diodora Astaroth, what's the meaning of this? Rias shouted in anger while Naruto was glaring murderously at Diodora. What have you done to Asia? Give her back, you fucking bastard. Naruto roared in anger. Rias Gremory and League Summoner Naruto Uzumaki. I shall take Asia Argento with me. Diodora calmly spoke with a sickeningly sweet smile as numerous magic circles formed around him. Those were not the symbols of the Astaroth. Azazel finally informed as he summoned his wings. Get ready to fight. Those are from groups that are associated with Kao's brigade. The Old Mao faction. As the enemy devils took their positions around Diodora, one of them spoke up while glaring at Rias. The blood relative of the fake Lucifer, Rias Gremory. You will die here today. Diodora then took his turn to speak as he took a step forward with a wide smirk on his face. As you can see, all of you will die here by their hands, the agents of Kao's brigade. No matter how powerful all of you are, you won't be able to take on this many numbers of high-class devils and mid-class devils, right? Ha 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 ha, so die. Perish right away. Bring it. Naruto roared as he took Calibrum from his back and fired a shot at Diodora, only for a barrier to protect him from it. Allowing Alone to put the sniper rifle away, Naruto then charged at Diodora with rage burning in his eyes, grabbing Rost and picking him up on his way. The group of devils around the Diodora instantly reacted, rushing forward to attack Naruto, only for the blonde to start carving his way through them, slashing the scythe with extreme precision while the Darkin laughed maniacally as Naruto soaked him in blood and organs of his enemies. Summoner, Summoner. Please calm down. You're losing yourself. Alun shouted, trying to reach out for Naruto, but her voice fell into deaf ears as the blonde continued to push forward, leaving arcs of blood behind him whenever he swung the scythe. Oh, shut up. This is only getting good. How did you hear me, Darkin? Alun looked at Rost and asked in surprise, but the sealed Darkin said nothing in response, merely continuing to enjoy Naruto's hatred and bloodlust. Get out of my fucking way. Naruto gritted his teeth and beheaded another devil, blood dripping down his face as he held Rost above his head while assuming a low stance and glaring murderously at Diodora, who became shocked at all the destruction the blonde had caused. Another group of Old Mao faction teleported in and rushed forward to fight Naruto, forcing him back with a barrage of immensely powerful spells. The summoner was forced to raise Rost up to defend himself, but soon the assault stopped, allowing Naruto to look up to see Kiba and Zenobia cutting down the devils, while Rias and the others fired their own demonic powers to aid them from behind. Go. Naruto-kun. Kiba shouted as he held back a swordsman with his holy demonic sword, pushing him out of Naruto's way as the blonde charged forward. Once he reached Diodora, the blonde swiftly slashed the Darkin scythe, aiming at the pure blood devil's neck. His eyes widened in surprise when his weapon just went through Diodora's neck, and yet he continued to stand there, smirking at him. You are as stupid as you look, Naruto Uzumaki. You think I will come face you myself? Diodora asked, revealing himself to be just a hologram before continuing. If you think you are strong enough to face me, then try to fight your way to my base. I will be waiting, but try to not get killed on the way, cause I want you to see as I become one with my lovely Asia. With the last laugh, Diodora vanished from sight with Asia, leaving the devils from the Old Mao faction to fight the Gremory group and Azazel, who made quick work of them, but more were coming, forcing Azazel to raise a barrier around their base to buy them some time. Damn it. Naruto cursed as he swung Rost and hit one of the Nexus towers behind him, impaling the blade deeply into the structure in a fit of rage, but the Darkin didn't look like he minded, merely laughing while keeping his eye on the young summoner, whose shoulder was grabbed by Kiba as he tried to calm his friend down. Calm down, Naruto-kun. I know that you are angry. All of us here are. But you need to stay calm. We need to take care of the enemies on our way first before we can rescue Asia. Kiba told him in a firm tone, and it was only then that Naruto noticed that his face was soaked in blood, and realized how fast he was breathing and saw all the dismembered bodies around him. You're right. I'm sorry, Naruto said, taking a deep breath as he looked at the rest of the group, who were all giving a pleading and reprimanding look. He then glanced over to Alone, and saw her nodding her head at him with comforting eyes. It appears that the game is under attack from Kao's brigade. Everyone then turned their heads to look at Azazel as the fallen angel broke the silence, closing down the communication spell that he had been using to talk to his colleagues outside of the field before continuing in a serious tone. The game committees and those from different factions are cooperating to take them on outside, so we will be on our own here. Our main objective will be rescuing Asia and dealing with the traitor Diodora Astaroth. Then what are we waiting for? Naruto asked as he yanked Rost out of the Nexus Tower and put it on his shoulder. Let's go rescue Asia and make sure that that bastard pay. Yeah. Just hang on, Asia. Naruto thought as he stared down the mid lane, the shortest path to the blue base. We are coming for you. That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfictions. Looking forward to having you on board again.